Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is directly targeting his rival, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, after Trump called Florida's 6-week abortion ban that DeSantis signed into law a terrible mistake.
Time he did a deal with Democrats, whether it was on budget, whether it was on the Criminal Justice First Step Act, they ended up taking him to the cleaners. He's going to make the Democrats happy with respect to right to life. I think all pro-lifers should know that he's preparing to sell you out.
Let's discuss with our panel. Doug, it's such a weird debate because there is nobody other than maybe Mitch McConnell more responsible for the overturning of Roe v. Wade than Donald Trump. And yet, on the other hand, Governor DeSantis is accurately pointing out that Donald Trump is criticizing the laws that now, because of Donald Trump's actions, states are passing that make abortion essentially all but illegal.
There's a lot to unpack there, right? In one question. And first, Ron DeSantis actually supported the first version of the First Step Act, voted for it. He was a member of Congress then, which he's now trying to criticize Trump with. But with abortion, it becomes very complicated. It's always been a complicated issue. It's become more complicated for Republicans since the Dobbs decision. Donald Trump often said, only I can do this or only I can do that. As you point out, it's either him or Mitch McConnell who can say, only I was able to overturn Dobbs. But what we see is where DeSantis has tried to move to the right of Trump on issue after issue and not really been able to. This is an area where he might be able to. We'll ultimately see where voters are reacting when it comes to a 6-week ban versus maybe 12 or 15 isn't where the rest of the country is.
It's a complicated issue for Republicans, but with regard to Donald Trump, it's not. As you said, he's responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned, other than the justices who actually rendered the decision. And he just a few months ago was bragging about having killed Roe v. Wade. What this is, though, Ron DeSantis Donald Trump is playing to a general audience.
Right, he's already moved on to the general election, right.
And so DeSantis actually was helping him in a general election context. That's a fight that Trump would love to have, right? Because he knows this is the kind of manipulation we saw in 2016. Now in 2024, he actually has a record like he did in 2020, and we have to hold him accountable. It's not complicated. This is the kind of distortion and abuse, frankly, of the media and the airwaves that we've seen from Donald Trump. He's trying to have it both ways. And the truth is, nobody trusts Donald Trump to cut any kind of deal with anybody. And I can just say, as a Democrat, I'm not happy if that's what Ron DeSantis wanted to hear.
You're not happy that what?
He said, DeSantis said, this is going to make Democrats so happy. No, I'm not happy. I'm not happy to see Donald Trump again. More lies, more misdirection that unfortunately some people may buy.
And Doug, let's turn to another matter of the Trump campaign, a new radio ad the Trump campaign is running in Detroit and Toledo, where auto workers, talking about the auto workers strike.
Donald Trump calls them great Americans and has always had their backs, from tax cuts for their families to playing hardball with China. Biden, he's turned his back on the auto workers by cutting a deal that uses American tax dollars to help fund China's electric car business.
It's not entirely accurate there. The electric car business it's an American electric car business. It's true that the batteries are made in China, and maybe that's something that American manufacturing should think about. But what's interesting about it is obviously Trump making a direct play for union voters, which is not something that Republicans normally have done.
No, we've already seen a real split with that, with Tim Scott, who's gone in the more traditional route and done so loudly. So the one time I talked to Donald Trump's campaign, I emailed a friend who I'd known for a long, long time. This will tell you how much our politics have changed. I said, no Democrat has gone to Flint, Michigan yet and talked about the groundwater, the drinking water there. If Donald Trump were the first, he would explode this campaign. It obviously never happened. But this is sort of a version of that. He's going to places where Republicans don't typically do so, is going to do it presumably when Republicans are at the biggest shrine that Republicans have, the Reagan Library, and in a debate to say, I'm doing something different, and ultimately I'm for you. That message that he used effectively against Hillary Clinton, he's trying to do so here. Again, it's not what Republicans may want to hear,
Right.
but he's making a different argument.
But again, it's a general election argument, right? Because the truth is, and I think Biden would love to have this conversation in a general election, because the very CEOs that the union is trying to hold accountable in their negotiating got massive tax breaks from the Trump tax cut. So the irony of him going back to workers and saying, I'm for you, when he didn't do a thing for them when he was president. I actually went back and looked at all the fact checks from his various trips to Michigan during 2020, where he basically, once again, just lied about his record. Remember, he said he was going to bring manufacturing back and he was going to save plants, when actually during his time in office, we lost factories, GM factory, frankly, in Michigan. So sure, he's going to do it. Doesn't mean he's going to tell the truth.
Well, what's interesting about it is that more than 70% of the American people, according to a Gallup poll, are with the striking auto workers, and a majority of the country is with the striking actors and writers in Hollywood. I mean, there is I don't want to call it populist because that word's getting so stigmatized, but there is a real pro-worker sentiment in the country right now. And yet, Trump is doing this, which I think is smart politics. Mm-hmm. You have Nikki Haley asked about it. She says, I'm from a right-to-work state. I chase out the unions. You have Tim Scott saying, look at what Reagan did with the air traffic controllers. If people go on strike, you should fire them. I mean, it feels like Trump, and again, you don't have to believe him, but just in terms of the politics of it, it does seem more on the pulse of the American people.
Well, and Trump's not alone here. We've seen J.D. Vance speak out on this as well. I think we'll see other Republican House members and Senate members too. But there is also a risk here, and that's as these things go on, often where the blame happens can shift. As House Republicans have learned over the years, when you shut down the government, the country may think it's fine for a while, but the longer it goes on, they start to question some of those policies. If we have this strike go on for a long time, I think families are going to be in a real bind here, and we'll see if they turn on this or not.
Speaking at a closed-door fundraiser in a packed Broadway theater yesterday, Karen, President Biden had sharp words for Donald Trump. He said, quote, "Let there be no question, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy." He said in 2024, democracy is on the ballot once again. I know he really believes that. The message worked in 2020. Do you think it's going to be as resonant this year, or next year, rather?
1,000%, because look at what just happened in Ohio when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. It won. Particularly for women in this country, that is democracy. If we're not treated as full citizens in a democracy, absolutely. The attacks on voting rights and other freedoms and the fundamental shifts that this country is undergoing that Joe Biden's trying to talk about.
Doug and Karen, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.